Did you know that the lack of strategic thinking in leadership is one of the weaknesses in organizations today? On the 4 Leaders podcast this week, which releases each Wednesday, I want to challenge you about the subject that is difficult to talk about sometime, but we're going to talk about it here on this podcast. Strategic thinking in leadership. I promise you, this will have implications for your life, for the way you do your family and you think about your family. It will have implications for a lot of areas of life. So I really want us to zoom in. I want us to grab a hold of this subject. We're going to go straight to it. And I hope that you'll share it with your friends and your family sometime soon.
Ronnie Floyd is a leader of leaders with a vision to change the world. The 4 Leaders podcast with Ronnie Floyd is committed to investing, inspiring, and influencing your life and leadership today. With a legacy of investing in thousands and thousands of leaders throughout the years who've led in multiple arenas of leadership. Now is the time, and today is the day for Ronnie Floyd to invest, inspire, and influence you in a serious and responsible way. So spread the news and share the 4 Leaders podcast with others around the world. Now, here's your host, Ronnie Floyd.
You know, when we talk about subjects like this, it requires from us to be willing to talk about it honestly and openly. Because, you know, sometimes when we talk about the lack of strategic thinking, we think about personalities, and we need to think beyond the personalities. Strategic thinking is really must be a cultural experience that is occurring within an organization or even your own personal life. But I want us to start where it gets a little sensitive for all of us. You see, each of us, we must be willing to admit and acknowledge some things about ourselves and about the organizations that we are serving presently. And we just need to be honest about these things. And so why and what should we be honest about? I think we need to be honest, first of all, about our failures. You know, we have all failed at times in thinking strategically. In organizations fail at times in thinking strategically. And decisions are made many times that people are not thinking about the long-term future. They're thinking about today or what's going to bring support from their stockholders or whatever the situation may be. And all those are real live things that we need to be concerned about. But when you're thinking about an organization, you think about a business, you think about a team, you think about a church, you think about anything in life, we have to admit, you know what? We've not always done it right. And we have to admit our failures. I can assure you, I know some of my own failures in this. And, you know, it's part of life, but we've got to realize this. I think another matter we have to look at are the limitations of ourselves. The limitations in relationship to not only our own skills, our own personal life, our abilities, our talent level, but we have to think about how we are even limited in many organizations. You know, an organization, a business, a company cannot do everything. I mean, there has to be a focus, there has to be a mission, there has to be a goal. And so, but at times we've got to really understand we're limited in certain things, and we don't need to be trying to be all things to all people for whatever reason that may be. And the pressures are great in that, and you know that and I know that. But I also believe that we need to look at the needs that we have. Oftentimes, there are needs that that the people that lead in organizations, they have needs. They have needs for continuing education. They have needs for trying to sharpen their skill set. They may have been great 5 years ago, but what have we done to develop them today? Not only for today, but for the future. And that involves even ourselves. But not only our own needs, but the organization's needs. If the organization is in a very difficult time in one or two major areas, you just can't act like that's not happening. So we have to admit that, and we have to understand that. Because you have a chance to do strategic leadership in a better way if you're able, personally and in the organization, to understand the status, where we are. It helps us to know where we are. We have to start somewhere, and sometimes where we start is not always the best place. And so in that, this mandates the need for what we're calling today strategic thinking. I have a friend, several friends who are football coaches, and even a son who is one. But I have a friend who has said this to me on numerous occasions, and he's a very successful football coach. He said, you know what, I learned how to coach football by coaching with others who I looked and I said, I don't want to coach this way, or maybe I don't want to treat other people this way. He said, so I learned how to be a better coach by seeing what I didn't want in certain things. That's helped me to be better. Now listen, he's smart enough to realize he's got probably people on his staff, or they've been on his staff. They probably thought the same thing about him. That's just part of life and leadership, okay? But oftentimes we learn what we need to do by learning what we don't want to do or don't think we need to do. So I think it's important we really try to grasp in defining what strategic leadership is. Let me take a shot at it, and feel free to let me know your thoughts on this. But strategic thinking in your organization will occur when the mission is clear, the future vision is set, and the organization is agile enough to anticipate, adjust, and align to the future. Let's start and work our way through this. Strategic thinking in your organization will occur when the mission is clear. I want you to make this note in your mind. Mission clarity is a must. There's no way in the world you can constantly be changing what your mission is. And you can't just be running after every fantasy that somebody wants you to run after, or it may be something wonderful that they want you to do. But if it doesn't fit in your mission, then not only you as the leader have to be clear, but everyone has to be clear. We have a passion for what you want to do. However, our mission does not let us do this. And so we can think better strategically when we know, and the leaders around us know, and hopefully the organization knows, this is our mission. It is clear what that mission is. But notice also, it helps this whole element of strategic thinking when the future vision is set. In other words, we know what the future is way out there in the future. We know what that is. We know where we want to be. We have defining goals. These goals are reachable. They're specific. They're measurable. They meet all the standards of that, and they even have timelines with them. Well, when an organization operates like that, listen carefully, that involves strategic thinking even to get there. But if you don't have any of those things, then that means the company does not know where it's going. That means the business does not know where it's going. The organization, whether for-profit or non-profit, will not know where it's going. And that's not only true about organizations. That's true about even our own personal lives. But also you have a better shot at being strategic in your thinking, not only when the mission is clear, not only when the future vision is set, but when you experience what you hear a lot about, and that is organization alignment. In other words, everything comes into alignment in the organization. Now let's go deeper on that, because I want to go back to what I stated here. And I want to read this one more time, and I want to work ourselves through the last part of what I said. Strategic thinking in your organization will occur when the mission is clear, the future vision is set, and, listen carefully, the organization is agile enough. In other words, you can adapt, you can move, you can change in a timely fashion so that you can anticipate what's coming, so that you can adjust to it, and you can align the entire organization just by the turn of the dial. I mean, listen, you do that with technology at times. And, it takes that one button, that one thing that you have to do. And if you know how to do it, it's simple. Now, if you don't know how to do it, then you got to call somebody that does, and they can do it quickly, because you'll never figure it out. I've learned personally. It's very difficult. And trial and error is just not a good way to do anybody's technology, including mine. And I want to just admit, especially mine, since I got a couple of guys here who are helping me do this podcast, and I'm grateful for them. But it's important that we're aware of who we are and really self-aware. That's really what we're talking about. And, we have to admit, too, that there are some things beyond our control. You take some organizations, they just are what they are. And that doesn't mean they're bad, but by the nature of who they are, they cannot be agile and do exactly what needs to be done at the moment. And they know that. The strong ones do, and the healthy ones do. You see, I've learned this, and it's taken me a lot of years to learn this. And you have to think about this, and you can decide whether or not it has any meaning to you or not. But I've learned that any organization that you serve, doesn't matter what it is, when you're there, it's a snapshot in time. Now that's hard to say. I led a large multi-campus church for 32 years and 7 months. And in reality, it's one snapshot in time. Leaders come, leaders go. Leadership is stewardship. All leadership is temporary. You understand? So whether you're somewhere for a year or you're somewhere for 5 years or 10 years, it's a snapshot in time. Now, why is that important? That's important because that can be a very productive season, or it may be filled with multiple seasons, or it can be an increasingly difficult season that you were in the organization, or you were in that team, or that church, or in whatever you're a part of in your life. You see, strategic thinking is not accomplished when we do things by trial and error. And all of a sudden, we look at it and we say, oh man, I made a mistake in that. That's not good. Well, listen, it's never good to make a mistake. You know that, and I know that. But it's one thing to use trial and error when you're testing a product, or you're testing a way to do something in some kind of communication mode. But it's another thing when you jeopardize everything. And you have to be careful with all that, and you've got to weigh that. I just know, the bigger the company, the bigger the challenge, the bigger the situation, we've got to understand we can't just get away and say, well, we're going to try it. If it works, fine. If it doesn't work, fine. I got it. If you're plugging in a computer, that's one thing. But if you tear it apart, that's another thing. You can't do that. Most of us are not gifted to even get in it. So we have to understand that there's just certain things you don't do or you hurt everything. Well, oftentimes we make an assumption, and in reality, part of it is beyond an assumption. But that is, is big always bureaucratic? Well, there's no question about it. It can become bureaucratic, but this does not mean that all big is bad. All big is not bad. But let me tell you what, big can do what small cannot do. But small can do what big will never be able to do. Whether it's a small company, whether it's a small health clinic, or whether it's a small school. I mean, people say, well, they can't do this. Well, they can do a lot of things that big can never get done. And why is that important? I'll tell you why. Because when you're big, it's hard to be agile. It's hard to be able to have everything you need. The bigger you become, the more challenges you're going to face. It's not less challenges, it's more challenges. And so when we think about strategic thinking, I just want to tell you, this is not an easy thing to work through. And so with that, why is it so difficult at times? Well, we've already covered that, but I just want to simply mention it in this manner today. I'll tell you when it's difficult. When the mission is not clear and the organization begins to drift from its mission. When the vision for the future is not successful. When the gift set of the leaders on the team, when those gift sets are limited, that's problematic. You see, whatever it's worth, talent does matter. People's ability, their competency level does matter. And then relying on ourselves, that can get us into trouble, rather than using other people to help us in these matters. So as we begin to wrap it down today, I want to clarify something for you that is very, very important. And that is, I want to talk about 4 ways that we can leverage and improve strategic thinking in our organization. What are those ways? How can we think about this in our life, but also mainly in the business, the company, the school, the church, whatever the organization is, profit or nonprofit? What are 4 ways we can leverage and improve the way we think strategically in our organization or even our department within our organization? First way I want to mention is ask questions. Just ask questions. When I was here at Cross Church and other organizations I've led, I've always asked questions. Questions are important. Questions give an opportunity for people to speak, and you don't need to answer their questions. You may know the answer, but you want to know what their answer is. It will help you understand not only what they think about the organization, but it's going to help you understand them. Because you might be able to take their thinking from here to here, which is much better, maybe. But they may be able to take your thinking and challenge it so you can't be intimidated by it and you can't get angry about it. It's important that we leverage and improve our strategic thinking in our lives and in our organization. And we can do that when we ask questions. Most especially, the right questions need to be asked. The second way you can leverage and improve strategic thinking is collaborate together. Collaborate together. I can assure you there have been many times in every organization I've ever been a part of and led that I seriously was not only asking questions, but we got together in a room and made a decision together. I learned a long time ago, you can't go where the people don't want to go. And you can't take them somewhere they don't want to go. And one of the best things you can do is one thing: collaborate together about what is best for the organization long term. Strategic thinking, it cannot ignore the present, but listen, one thing it must not ignore is long term. Short term fixes do not fix the situation long term. So we have to collaborate together. That's important. A third way we can leverage and enhance this whole element of strategic thinking is what I would call reset the future. Just reset the future of the organization. Some organizations need to redefine who they are, and they need to reset their future. They need to relook at their vision. Are they really able to do what they say they do? Do they have the people they need? Do they have the systems in place to do what they're doing? And so sometimes it's important to push pause and to reset the future organizationally. And that takes time. You know, it's like the battleship. You can't turn it immediately. Well, that's what a lot of organizations are, okay? Especially long-term organizations. It's hard for a legacy organization many times to be able to turn and do what needs to be done overnight. And usually if you do, it may be the wrong thing. So sometimes it's important to understand that big is not bad, and sometimes, you know, what they decide can often be best in relationship to everyone in the game. So we have to reset the future. And then I think the final thing is that would really leverage any organization about strategic thinking. And this is something that is not, it can be connected to everything I've said, but it doesn't have to be. There are times when organizations just need to realign itself. Everybody needs to realign. Everything needs to be realigned. We know what it's like when you have to have your car put into alignment again. You have to do that. We know what it's like when you're trying to drive when it's not all in the right setting there. And so with that, that's the same way it is with an organization. I mean, I serve this church called Cross Church in Northwest Arkansas. Some of you are familiar with it. And, you know, it's a phenomenal church. But it is a very complex organization. I mean, I could go through all the things we have in relationship, and we do. It's very complex. But listen, everything has to be in alignment. And there were numerous times we just had to realign everything. Because listen, if an organization, I don't care if it's an organization with 5 employees, if you do not realign everything periodically, then you could be in a very, very challenging season ahead. I like to look at it this way. I like to look at strategic thinking as being an ongoing process, a never-ending process in an organization. And why do I say that? I say it because everything changes. And there's got to constantly be this ability to be agile enough to move things as it needs to be moved, but never moving your mission unless that's imperative and everyone agrees to it. And all that takes one thing, and it's hard work. You know what we call it? Due diligence. Due diligence. You have to become fanatical about details. And oftentimes, people don't like the details. But that's what it takes. And, just because somebody has a will problem and they want to get outside the will of the organization and exercise their own will at some point, that's not best. I'm going to talk about that soon on the podcast, and I hope you'll tune in to it. But it's important. It's so important that before we go today, that I just say one thing to you again. Don't let the lack of strategic leadership happen in your organization. Whatever it is. And I would encourage you even this. Don't let that happen in your life. And don't let that happen in your family. Families are here, there. They've got schedules. Their kids have schedules. It's a tough thing. It's challenging. But sometimes there has to be a push on pause. And once again, let's remember, everyone, this is who we are. This is what we do. And it's important that we ultimately do what the Lord wills in our lives, and even in the way we lead and we impact organizations. One of the things that I've had a heart for years is to help people walk with the Lord every day, and the power of that walk makes a major difference in the way they do their business, whether they're at school, working at a school, educational institution, or they work in healthcare, or they work in a major corporation, or they have a private business, or they might be in a church or a denomination, or whatever the situation may be. It is so important that we remember our walk with Christ will determine where we go in all those areas. And that's why we have come together to introduce to you over the next few weeks. And the release date is formally on June the 4th. June the 4th. We're going to be releasing this brand new book. It's called Day by Day and Night by Night. 365 morning and evening devotions for leaders. This would make a fantastic gift for a high school graduate, college graduate, all the way to a person in their retirement years, or even in assisted living that just need to read 2 to 4 minutes a day, or a mom who lives on a constant pace, trying to keep up with her children, and many of them working outside the home as well, or a busy husband, or someone even single. This will help you in your walk with Christ, which will impact every organization. You know what? I've written all 365 of these myself. It's coming out to help you, and I hope that you will take advantage of it, and you can literally go on Amazon.com right now, and you can pre-order it, and it would be a wonderful thing to do, and I hope you'll tell your friends about it. Thank you for being a part of the 4 Leaders Podcast. I promise you, we're going to help you be whatever God wants you to be. And I hope that we're preparing you to think not only strategically about how you operate in your business and your organization, but to think strategically about your life. And that's why you listen to podcasts like this, because we want to help you and inspire you and influence you to make a difference in this world.
Thanks for tuning in. For more information on Ronnie Floyd, go to 4leaders.com. We'll see you next time.